Morning sunlight spilled gently across the modest apartment where Alina stood before her small mirror, her trembling hands adjusting the lace veil pinned into her dark hair. Her wedding dress, simple yet elegant, shimmered softly under the golden light. She smiled faintly at her reflection, whispering to herself, "You've come so far, today is your new beginning." Behind her, a worn photo frame showed a picture of the orphanage she grew up in, her only family. Her best friend from the orphanage, Zara, peeked in with teary eyes. "You look like a princess," she said, voice trembling with emotion. Alina laughed softly, "A princess without a kingdom." Zara held her hand. "You have something better, a heart full of grace. Don't let anyone take that from you." A knock on the door startled them. It was one of Ryan's cousins, standing tall and smug. "The car's waiting. Don't keep the groom waiting, or he might change his mind," he said with a mocking smile. Zara frowned, but Alina stayed calm. She'd grown used to the subtle insults, the sideways glances. Ryan's family never hid their disapproval. She was an orphan, after all, not one of them. As the car drove her toward the grand mansion where the wedding ceremony would be held, Alina gazed out at the city rushing past. Her heart beat fast with a mix of excitement and anxiety. She remembered the day she met Ryan, charming, confident, the kind of man who could make any girl feel seen. Back then, he had told her that he loved her strength, her independence, her humility. She believed him, but as the engagement progressed, his tone changed. So did his family's. When she arrived at the mansion, she was greeted not with warmth but with whispers. Ryan's mother stood at the top of the stairs, her diamond necklace glinting under the chandelier. "You're late," she said sharply. "We were beginning to think the orphanage couldn't afford a clock." Her friends chuckled quietly. Alina's cheeks burned, but she only bowed slightly. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll get ready right away." In the preparation room, she could hear Ryan laughing with his groomsmen. "She's lucky I'm marrying her," he said, voice dripping with arrogance. "I mean, who else would want a girl with no family, no name, nothing?" His friends roared with laughter. The words pierced her heart like knives, but she kept silent. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry today. Zara, who had come in with her bouquet, froze as she overheard them. "Alina, you can still walk away," she whispered fiercely. "He doesn't deserve you." But Alina shook her head. "Not today. I'll face this with dignity." As the ceremony began, Ryan's family strutted proudly, showing off their wealth to the guests. Alina walked down the aisle alone, no father to guide her, no mother to wipe her tears. Just her own quiet courage. Every eye was on her, some admiring, others judging. She smiled anyway, her eyes locking on Ryan's. For a brief second, she saw pride flicker in his gaze, pride that she looked beautiful, before it turned to something colder, almost condescending. When they exchanged rings, Ryan whispered under his breath, "Now you'll finally have a family name to be proud of." Alina looked at him, her heart heavy with disappointment. "And I hope you'll have a heart to match it," she replied softly, almost inaudibly. He didn't hear her, or didn't care to. As the priest pronounced them husband and wife, applause filled the hall, but Alina's chest felt hollow. Ryan leaned in and smiled for the cameras, whispering, "Try not to embarrass me today." She stood motionless, her expression composed. Deep inside, she felt something shifting, a quiet strength rising. The orphan girl who had once been invisible was about to show the world, and her new husband, that her worth didn't need anyone's approval. The afternoon sun glared over the sprawling garden of the wedding venue. White roses lined the aisle, golden drapes fluttered in the soft breeze, and guests mingled, admiring the luxury surrounding them. But beneath all that glitter, Alina stood in silence, clutching her bouquet tightly. Every laugh, every whisper felt like it carried a hidden jab, a reminder that she didn't belong here. Ryan strutted across the hall like a king, charming the guests and flashing his confident smile. "She looks decent, doesn't she?" one of his friends murmured, nodding toward Alina. "Decent for an orphan, maybe," Ryan smirked. The men burst out laughing. His words sliced through Alina's heart, but she kept her chin high, pretending not to hear. The photographer called them together for couple portraits. As she stood beside him, Ryan leaned close and whispered, "You're trembling, relax. People are watching. Try to look grateful." Grateful. The word burned inside her. She turned her face slightly, forcing a smile for the camera. The flash went off, capturing an image of what looked like happiness, but only she knew how hollow it was. Later, during the reception, Ryan's mother took the stage for a speech. "Today, we welcome Alina into our family," she said, her tone dripping with fake warmth. "Though she doesn't have much family background, we're sure she'll learn how to carry herself properly in high society." The guests chuckled politely. Alina sat frozen, her smile fragile, her throat tight. Zara, sitting nearby, clenched her fists, whispering, "They're humiliating you." But Alina only shook her head. "It's fine," she whispered back. "Let them talk." The dinner was lavish, filled with rich dishes, laughter, and gossip. Ryan mingled proudly, ignoring his new wife most of the time. A few guests approached Alina out of politeness, asking shallow questions. "So, where are your parents?" one woman asked casually. "I'm an orphan," Alina answered gently. The woman blinked, clearly uncomfortable, and quickly excused herself. The moment she left, Ryan's aunt leaned over and said mockingly, "Maybe next time, dear, you shouldn't mention that. It doesn't sound very elegant." Alina smiled politely, but inside her chest, anger stirred like fire. For years, she had endured pity and judgment, yet never once had she been ashamed of her past. Why should she start now? She placed her fork down quietly, excused herself, and stepped out into the garden, where the cool air kissed her flushed face. Under the dim fairy lights, she pulled out her phone and made a quiet call. "Yes," she said softly. "They can come now." Her voice carried calm authority, nothing like the timid girl Ryan's family believed her to be. Meanwhile, inside the hall, Ryan was busy bragging to his guests. "You know, I didn't marry her for money," he laughed loudly. "I married her out of pity. I figured I'd give her a better life, she should be thankful." His words spread quickly through the room, causing whispers and disapproving glances. Zara overheard him and stormed toward Alina, nearly in tears. "He's telling people he married you out of pity," she cried. Alina turned to her, her expression unreadable. "Let him," she said quietly. "His words will speak for him soon." Suddenly, a low rumble echoed from outside. The sound grew louder. Powerful engines, many of them. Conversations stopped. The guests turned toward the entrance as a convoy of sleek black limousines rolled into the driveway, escorted by luxury SUVs. The air changed instantly. Murmurs filled the hall. Ryan frowned, glancing toward the noise. "Who's that?" another guest, he asked, half irritated, half curious. His mother's brows furrowed. No one important, surely. Probably a mistake. But the waiters were already rushing to the door, straightening their uniforms nervously. The limousine stopped at the red carpet outside the hall. Uniformed drivers stepped out and opened the doors with precision. From the first car emerged an older man in a tailored suit, followed by several distinguished figures, CEOs, philanthropists, and government officials. Cameras flashed as they walked toward the entrance. Every head turned as they entered the hall. The guests gasped, whispering names that belonged to some of the most powerful people in the city. But the biggest shock came when the older man smiled warmly and said, "Where is Madame Alina? We came to congratulate her personally." Ryan froze, confusion clouding his face. "Madame Alina," he repeated under his breath, glancing toward his bride. Alina stood near the garden entrance, calm and poised, the faintest smile on her lips. She began walking toward them, her gown flowing like silk under the lights. And for the first time that day, it wasn't the groom who drew the eyes of the crowd, it was the orphan bride who walked with the grace of a queen, toward a truth that would change everything. The hall fell into stunned silence as Alina stepped forward, her calm footsteps echoing against the marble floor. Every guest turned, unsure how to react. The powerful figures who had just entered, men and women whose names carried weight in politics, business, and philanthropy, approached her with respect that left the entire wedding party speechless. The elderly man at the front, Mr. De Silva, a renowned international philanthropist, took Alina's hands warmly. "My dear, you look radiant," he said, his voice filled with affection. "We wouldn't have missed your special day for the world." Behind him stood the directors of major organizations, all smiling at her like family. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ryan's mother's jaw dropped slightly as she whispered, "What is going on?" Ryan's confusion turned into disbelief as the guests began whispering her name, not as the orphan bride, but as Madame Alina Rahim, director of the Horizon Foundation. Ryan blinked hard, thinking he misheard. The Horizon Foundation, that was one of the largest charitable networks in the country, a name often mentioned on the news for its multi-million-dollar projects supporting orphanages, hospitals, and women's education. He turned to Alina, stammering, What are they talking about?" Alina smiled softly, her voice steady and composed. "They're talking about the work I've been doing for the past few years. The orphanage I came from was one of our first projects." The guests erupted in murmurs, eyes wide with shock. A woman gasped, "She's that Alina." Another whispered, "The one who was awarded the Humanitarian of the Year." Cameras began flashing, reporters who had been invited for wedding coverage now shifting their lenses toward her with excitement. Ryan's face turned pale. The same woman he had mocked for being a poor orphan was, in fact, wealthier and more respected than his entire family combined. His mother's expression hardened, trying to mask her humiliation, but her shaking hands betrayed her. Mr. De Silva turned to the audience with a broad smile. "This young woman's kindness has changed thousands of lives. She might not have been born with a family, but she's built one through love and service. We are proud to call her our colleague and our friend." The hall filled with thunderous applause. Alina bowed her head humbly, but her eyes met Ryan's, and in them, he saw no anger, only strength. She turned back to the dignitaries and said gracefully, "I'm deeply grateful for your support. Today isn't just my wedding day, it's a reminder that no matter where you come from, you can still create a life that inspires others." Ryan's pride crumbled. He stepped forward, trying to save face. "Alina, why didn't you tell me?" He stuttered, his voice suddenly soft, almost pleading. I didn't know you were." She interrupted gently. "Would it have made a difference? Would you have treated me with kindness if I were wealthy?" Her tone wasn't bitter, just calm, factual, piercing. He opened his mouth but had no answer. His friends stood awkwardly behind him, their smirks long gone. The same guests who once pitied Alina now looked at Ryan with disgust. The master of ceremonies approached, unsure whether to continue the reception, but Alina raised her hand slightly. "There's no need," she said. "This celebration has already served its purpose." Mr. De Silva placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We'll wait for you outside, dear," he said softly. "Your car is ready." He nodded toward the entrance, where the fleet of black limousines gleamed under the chandeliers. Ryan followed her with desperate eyes as she turned to walk toward the exit. "Alina, please, listen, I didn't mean what I said. It was all jokes, just foolish words. I didn't know." She stopped and looked back one last time. Her voice, though quiet, carried through the hall. "You knew enough to mock me. You just never cared enough to see me." Then she turned away. The reporters snapped photos as she walked with grace, escorted by the dignitaries who treated her with the respect she had always deserved. Ryan watched helplessly, his face burning with shame as his bride, the woman he'd thought beneath him, was honored by the very people he once dreamed of impressing. Outside, the crowd cheered as Alina stepped into the sleek limousine, the door closing softly behind her. For the first time in her life, she wasn't the girl without a family. She was a woman who had found her place in the world, on her own terms. And as the convoy of cars rolled away, the groom who had mocked her was left behind, surrounded by silence, regret, and the heavy weight of his own cruelty. The night air shimmered with the glow of city lights as Alina's limousine glided through the streets, her reflection flickering faintly in the tinted glass. Inside, she sat quietly, her fingers tracing the edge of her bouquet. The applause from the hall still echoed in her ears, yet her heart was calm, not triumphant, not bitter, just free. Mr. De Silva sat across from her, watching her with fatherly pride. "You handled yourself with grace," he said softly. "Not many could have stood that tall in front of those who tried to humiliate them." Alina smiled faintly. "I didn't want revenge," she murmured. "I just wanted to remind them that being born with nothing doesn't mean you'll die with nothing." The convoy stopped in front of the grand ballroom of a luxury hotel, where a private dinner awaited her and the foundation guests. As she stepped out, photographers outside snapped pictures, flashes bright against the night. Reporters shouted her name, Madam Alina. Madam Alina. But she simply waved politely and walked inside, every inch the dignified woman she had fought to become. Meanwhile, back at the wedding venue, the once proud groom sat slumped at a table, the party now in shambles. Guests whispered behind their hands, waiters cleared untouched plates, and the grand music that once filled the hall had faded into awkward silence. Ryan's mother sat rigid, her face pale. "You've ruined us," she hissed under her breath. "Do you realize who she is? You mocked a woman who could have opened every door for you." Ryan rubbed his temples, the reality crashing down on him. The videos of the event were already spreading online, clips of him laughing about marrying an orphan, beside footage of Alina being addressed as Madam Director. His humiliation was public, irreversible. He stood abruptly and stormed out, ignoring the flashing cameras that now followed him for all the wrong reasons. A few days later, Ryan arrived unannounced at Alina's office. The Horizon Foundation headquarters stood tall and modern, its glass walls gleaming under the morning sun. Security guards recognized him but let him through after she approved his entry. When he entered her office, he found her sitting behind a large mahogany desk, reviewing documents. She looked up calmly. "Ryan," she said evenly. "I didn't expect to see you." He took a step forward, guilt etched across his face. "Alina, please, I came to apologize. I was arrogant, blind. I didn't see your worth until it was too late." His voice trembled. "Can we start over?" Alina studied him for a long moment. There was no anger in her eyes, only a quiet, distant sadness. "You want to start over now that you've learned I'm not the poor orphan you thought I was?" she asked. "Tell me, Ryan, would you still be here if those limousines hadn't arrived?" He swallowed hard, unable to answer. She stood, walking toward the window overlooking the city. "You humiliated me in front of hundreds of people. Not because I hurt you, but because I wasn't born into privilege. You thought kindness was weakness, and love was charity." She turned to him, her voice calm but final. "I forgive you, but I can't walk back into the life you offered. I don't belong there anymore." Ryan's shoulders slumped. He realized the truth. She wasn't rejecting him out of pride, she had simply outgrown him. "Goodbye, Alina," he said softly, before walking away, his reflection fading in the glass door like a shadow leaving her life for good. Alina stood there for a while, staring at the skyline. The sun broke through the clouds, bathing the city in gold. She thought of her childhood, the orphanage, the nights she cried herself to sleep wishing for a family, and how life had come full circle. Zara entered quietly, smiling. "The board is ready for the meeting," she said. "Also, the new orphanage project is fully funded." "You did it, Alina." Alina smiled, her heart swelling with peace. "We did it," she corrected. "Every child deserves a chance, just like I had." She took one last glance at the sunlight streaming through her window, the light reflecting off her wedding ring still sitting on the desk, untouched since that day. With a deep breath, she picked it up, placed it gently into a drawer, and closed it. Outside, the foundation's cars waited, ready to take her to the next site, another orphanage opening, another beginning. As she stepped out of her office, the staff greeted her with respect, and children waiting at the gates waved excitedly. Alina smiled, her eyes bright. She had lost a husband, but she had found something far greater, her purpose, her dignity, and her power. The girl once mocked for being an orphan now carried the strength of 1,000 hearts, driving her forward into a future no one could ever take away.